Atlanta has earned the prestigious title of America's Black Mecca. However, when the media discusses black wealth in the city, the narrative almost always gravitates towards celebrities, professional athletes, or sensational viral success stories. What is consistently left out of the picture is who truly wields the financial power, controls the land, and directs the systems and the story of how they built it all. Today, I want to dissect an element that most of these conversations entirely overlook. This narrative isn't just about identifying who is wealthy. It's about understanding how wealth is structured, how it endures, and why some families discreetly influence the city's destiny while others quickly vanish from the headlines. We are going to examine Atlanta's most influential families spanning both old and new money and meticulously trace the genuine origins of their wealth. We're talking about private ownership, critical infrastructure services that people simply cannot do without, and the very land that dictates the future trajectory of the city. By the conclusion of this video, you won't just know who possesses wealth. You'll grasp why this is so critical right now, how Atlanta evolved into what it is today, and what that reveals about the future direction of real power. This is the authentic story behind the most affluent black families in Atlanta, the Black Mecca. I need to be transparent that net worth figures can vary, and certain details concerning private families are estimations derived from public reporting. Let's begin with a family that most headlines grossly oversimplify, because the real story has little to do with chicken sandwiches and everything to do with absolute control. The first name on this list established generational power by insisting on private ownership, maintaining disciplined profit margins, and treating their culture as non-negotiable: the Cathy family. The Cathy family owns Chick-fil-A, a privately controlled fast food titan that was founded in Atlanta and remains firmly in the hands of the founder's children and grandchildren. In 2024, Forbes assessed the family's collective fortune at a staggering $33.6 billion, securing them the number 8 spot among America's wealthiest dynasties. The enterprise is still based in Atlanta and remains definitively family-operated. To comprehend why the Cathys are so incredibly wealthy, one must start with control and structure. Chick-fil-A is not a publicly traded company. There are no external shareholders to dilute the family's ownership stake. The company has over 3,000 locations throughout the United States and Canada and has preserved its brand identity with an unusual tightness for a chain of its magnitude. For instance, they remain closed on Sundays and enforce exceptionally strict operator standards. Leadership was passed down from founder S. Truett Cathy to his children, Dan Cathy, the chairman, Bubba Cathy, a long-serving executive, and Trudy Cathy White, the company ambassador, with Andrew Cathy, Dan's son, being appointed CEO in 2021, heralding a third-generation handover. Because the Cathys do not report their earnings in the same manner as public companies, most people only witness the long lines at their stores, not the formidable cash flow engine operating behind the curtain. The brand's economic model, characterized by high unit volumes, disciplined growth in store count, and a rigorous operator selection process, generates resilient profit margins, even when growth transitions from a full sprint to a steady jog. Slower growth does not compromise the model. In 2024, Chick-fil-A's system-wide sales growth in the U.S. reportedly decelerated to 5.4%, reaching approximately $22.7 billion. This marked its lowest rate in almost 19 years. But a reduced growth rate on such a massive base still generates a tremendous amount of cash, especially with a capital-light operator structure, when compared to systems that are entirely company-owned. The family's prominent position at the apex of Georgia's wealth rankings remained unchanged. It all began when a local diner evolved into a chicken sandwich concept between 1946 and 1967. That concept then scaled regionally and ultimately nationally, without ever ceding control to the public markets. Subsequently, the family layered on unwavering brand discipline menu, simplicity, a distinct service culture, and their signature Sunday closure, creating extraordinary per-store sales figures. Each of these steps ensured that equity and decision-making power stayed within the family, so the profits remained there as well. In my estimation, the Cathy family serves as a powerful illustration of how stringent governance, patient expansion, and private ownership can construct a fortune that is enduring rather than merely flashy. Even in a year with decelerated sales, the model functions flawlessly because it was engineered from the start to prioritize margins control and culture over sheer velocity. Chick-fil-A's system-wide sales were documented at around $22.7 billion in the U.S., with growth slowing down but still remarkably significant at such a massive scale. Because the Cathys are intensely private and maintain a culturally low profile, there is a distinct lack of verified public reporting regarding their personal acquisitions of luxury items such as super yachts, prestigious art collections, and so on. What is extensively documented, however, are their institutional scale assets and philanthropic platforms that unmistakably signal their immense wealth and influence. The corporate campus and its associated properties are signature high-value assets directly linked to the family's core business with a private company. Value, not a public one. Although not a luxury item, the family's philanthropic institutions, most notably Windshape, founded by S. Truett, Cathy, represent a lasting financial capacity, providing funds for youth programs, scholarships, and faith-based initiatives throughout the Southeast. Philanthropy effectively signals scale even when luxury spending is kept highly discreet. The chairmanship of Dan Cathy and the CEO succession of Andrew Cathy are integral parts of a family office-style continuity that is designed to preserve wealth, which is arguably more valuable in the long term than any visible trophy assets. Publicly available reliable sourcing on specific Cathy family trophy possessions is extremely scarce. Following them, we have the Cox family. They command Cox Enterprises, a fourth-generation Atlanta-based conglomerate. Public estimates position the family's net worth near the upper $20 billion range. Forbes reported $26.8 billion in 2024. Other 2025 compilations place them at around $27 billion, solidifying their status among the most affluent U.S. dynasties with deep Atlantic connections. To truly appreciate the Cox family's wealth, you must travel back more than a century. The business was born in 1898 when James M. Cox purchased a small Ohio newspaper. Across generations, that foundation expanded methodically, first into publishing, then into radio, and eventually into television. When the family relocated the company's center of operations to Atlanta, they strategically positioned themselves within a rapidly growing southern city that rewarded long-term ownership and civic involvement. Today, Cox Enterprises is still a privately owned corporation headquartered in Metro Atlanta and managed by family leadership. Alex Taylor, a great-grandson of the founder, holds the roles of chairman, president, and CEO. While other family members continue to be active in its governance, the Cox family did not preserve their wealth by clinging to a single industry. They systematically rotated into sectors characterized by recurring revenue and high customer switching costs. Cox Communications evolved into one of the largest private broadband providers in the U.S., serving roughly 6.5 million customers across scores of markets. Internet subscriptions effectively replaced the volatility that was once inherent in advertising-reliant newspapers. Cox Automotive now serves as the anchor of the empire. Brands like AutoTrader and Kelley Blue Book are embedded directly into the operational workflow of the auto industry, catering to dealers, manufacturers, and large fleets across the globe. Manheim by itself facilitates vehicle transactions worth tens of billions of dollars each year and generates approximately $3 billion in revenue. This is not about consumer hype. This is about essential infrastructure. While many media families saw their fortunes decline with print advertising, the Cox family sold or scaled down their broadcast assets and heavily invested in platforms that collect data, process transactions, and charge recurring fees. Each strategic pivot reduced their reliance on any single trend and significantly enhanced the predictability of their cash flow. This is precisely how the family managed to stay wealthy while so many others faded away. In my assessment, the Cox family represents one of the most pristine examples of strategic adaptation in the history of American family wealth. They did not chase public attention. They did not over-leverage their assets. They carefully selected systems, broadband, auto transactions data, and remained patient. While those systems became utterly indispensable, this is not flashy money. This is infrastructure money, and that very distinction is what explains its remarkable durability. The Cox family is well known for their discretion, but decades of reporting reveal a consistent pattern of high-value real estate located in and around Atlanta, including estate-level residences connected to family trusts and long-term holding companies. Specific addresses are intentionally guarded. A dedicated family office, as disclosed by Bloomberg, manages their investments, estate planning, and governance, which is a standard practice for families operating at this financial scale. Corporate aviation and other institutional-grade travel assets are widely believed to be operational necessities for a global conglomerate. Yet, unlike prominent owners such as Arthur Blank, the Cox family does not publicly brand or display their yachts, jets, or other trophy items. In summary, their luxury manifests itself through privacy, access, and control, not through overt spectacle. Cox Enterprises, the primary engine of Atlanta's expansion, wielding its power across three foundational domains: economic fortitude, civic direction, and the city's physical landscape, providing livelihoods for tens of thousands of residents while sustaining a vast web of suppliers, cementing its role at the core of the area's economic vitality. This financial dominance is amplified by an ingrained influence in civic affairs. For generations, the family has steered local policy and public conversation primarily using their control of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and their 34 by 34 social initiative, a program designed to uplift 34 million individuals by the year 2034. The dynasty's footprint is just as apparent in the city's physical and institutional fabric. Their sprawling corporate headquarters serves as the linchpin for the Sandy Springs business district, while their charitable entity, the James M. Cox Foundation, has funneled crucial capital into landmark undertakings such as the Atlanta Beltline and indispensable healthcare institutions like the Shepherd Center. Through its relentless push for innovation across the broadband, automotive, and clean technology industries, Cox Enterprises is far more than just a business operating in Atlanta. It acts as a primary designer of the city's very identity, ensuring the region's governance and infrastructure develop in lockstep with the corporation's worldwide ambitions. If the Cox dynasty embodies Atlanta's command over information and infrastructure, the subsequent family illustrates the power that comes from controlling an essential need. Their fortune wasn't amassed by influencing how people communicate or conduct commerce. It was constructed by tackling a problem that is utterly inescapable: the Rollins family. They forged one of Georgia's most resilient private fortunes through their ownership of Orkin, North America's premier pest control giant. Their immense wealth is channeled through Rollins Incorporated, a publicly listed corporation that the family firmly keeps within its grasp. As of 2026, their collective fortune is widely calculated to be in the $7 to $9 billion range, fluctuating with Rollins Incorporated's stock prices and various family assets. To truly grasp the scale of the Rollins financial empire, one must first appreciate their strategic choice of ownership. The dynasty initially ventured into media and advertising during the mid-20th century, but their landmark decision occurred in 1964. They acquired Orkin Exterminating Company in a deal frequently heralded as the very first leverage buyout in United States history. This single acquisition completely redefined the family's destiny. Instead of gambling on unpredictable advertising cycles or fleeting consumer fads, the Rollins clan committed wholeheartedly to services with recurring revenue. Think termite protection, pest eradication, sanitation, and environmental stewardship. These are necessities that individuals and corporations are compelled to fund irrespective of economic conditions. By the time Gary Rollins and his brother Randall assumed leadership, Orkin had evolved into the foundational pillar of a significantly larger empire of essential services. Now, here is a detail that is often overlooked. The pest control industry is intentionally mundane. It generates no viral sensations, is immune to cultural shifts, and lacks any dramatic tales of reinvention. What it does possess is something called contractual adhesion. The moment a household eatery medical center or government building signs an Orkin agreement changing to a new provider becomes a risky proposition. This dynamic generates a highly predictable stream of recurring income, minimizes customer attrition, grants them pricing leverage in inflationary times, and ensures steady cash flow through all economic cycles. In 2023, the family liquidated approximately a 9% holding in Rollins Incorporated for more than $1.5 billion before taxes, while remarkably maintaining about 40% ownership of the corporation. This maneuver provided them with massive liquidity without forcing them to relinquish command, a masterclass in wealth preservation for a dynastic family. First, the family acquires Orkin and dedicates itself to a service model over a product-based one. This brilliant move effectively transformed pest management into a subscription service. Well before the subscription economy gained popularity, these agreements were used to fund the takeovers of regional and global pest control companies, thereby expanding their operational scale. This increased size yielded superior purchasing power and logistical efficiencies, creating a formidable barrier for any rivals. Every acquisition reinforces their foundation. Every economic slump simply validates their business strategy, because when the markets falter, the pests do not. They resisted the siren song of innovation buzzwords and avoided over-diversification. Instead, they concentrated on a single critical service and pursued its perfection with relentless focus. Their wealth doesn't expand in sudden bursts. It grows through methodical, relentless accumulation. A fortune constructed this way is exceptionally resistant to disruption. They have operations in over 70 countries, with more than 800 branches across the globe, and millions of ongoing service agreements. Rollins Incorporated consistently declares annual revenues in the multi-billions of dollars, fueled predominantly by Orkin and its international pest control activities. In stark contrast to more ostentatious billionaires, the Rollins family's wealth is manifested in a traditional and discreet manner. Think sprawling southern estates in Georgia and Florida held within secure family trusts. Private aircraft are utilized for managing their global enterprise. They also hold marine assets through the Marine Products Corporation, a boat manufacturing firm, controlled by the family, featuring the Chaparral and Robalo brands, a venture that serves as both a sound investment and a reflection of their personal lifestyle. Their multi-generational trusts are engineered to ensure ownership remains tightly consolidated. This isn't wealth for show. It's operational luxury, perfectly aligned with their business interests. The Rollins clan operates as a discreet yet formidable cornerstone of Georgia's economy, exerting its influence through enormous employment figures and recession-proof industries. Beyond the financial statements, they mold the state's physical and social fabric via consistent involvement in commercial real estate and a notably understated method for influencing regional business policy. Their enduring legacy is solidified through generations of charitable giving, with a particular focus on public health and education via the Rollins School of Public Health at Emory University, guaranteeing their name will forever be foundational to Georgia's civic and financial stability. If the Rollins dynasty exemplifies a fortune built on indispensable services, Our next family reveals what occurs when one monumental business idea is transformed into a highly visible public empire. This is the kind of Atlanta fortune that's impossible to miss visible from the sidewalks, the stadium, and the skyline. The Blank family, headed by Arthur Blank, co-founder of the Home Depot and proprietor of several of Atlanta's premier sports franchises. As of 2026, Arthur Blank's personal net worth is generally estimated between $9 billion and $11 billion, ranking him among the most affluent individuals ever connected to Atlanta. In 1978, Arthur Blank and Bernie Marcus were abruptly dismissed from their executive positions at Handy Dan, a regional hardware chain. Rather than fading into obscurity, they boldly founded the Home Depot, gambling on the idea that consumers would flock to massive warehouse-style stores, offering vast selections and competitive prices. That gamble fundamentally altered American retail. The Home Depot expanded to become the globe's largest home improvement retailer, ultimately pulling in over $150 billion in annual revenue. Blank stepped away from daily leadership in 2001, but he departed with an enormous equity position that remains the bedrock of his fortune. Here is a common misconception regarding his wealth. While the Home Depot certainly made him rich, it was his foray into sports ownership that magnified his influence exponentially. In 2002, he acquired the Atlanta Falcons for approximately $545 million. Just 2 decades on that franchise is valued in the multi-billion-dollar echelon. He subsequently added Atlanta United FC, which almost instantly became one of Major League Soccer's most triumphant franchises. The value of owning sports teams extends far beyond mere ticket revenue. It encompasses franchise appreciation, lucrative media rights, real estate development, and significant civic influence. Blank approached sports not as a pastime, but as a calculated long-term asset strategy intrinsically linked to the expansion of Atlanta itself. In contrast to more reserved dynasties, his wealth is deliberately designed to be visible not for seeking the spotlight, but for demonstrating strategic alignment. His financial ventures consistently blend commercial profits with the development of public infrastructure, a key reason his influence feels so permanent. Unlike families that prefer to remain in the shadows, Arthur Blank's fortune is on full display. This includes private aviation for business travel, opulent properties within Georgia and beyond, and an ultra-luxurious super yacht, whose ownership is extensively documented. He also possesses elite sports venues that serve as valuable assets and powerful symbols. His philosophy on luxury directly reflects his business methodology, premium, intentional, and executed on a grand scale. Furthermore, Blank is a signatory to the Giving Pledge, having formally promised to contribute the greater part of his fortune to charity. Via the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, billions of dollars have been channeled into healthcare benefiting institutions like Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, as well as into education, veterans services, and civil rights causes. This is not end-of-life philanthropy. It is a calculated reinvestment strategy actively molding Atlanta even as he continues to expand his empire. They modernized it and then continued to mold its future from the shadows for multiple generations. We're talking about the Woodruff family, one of the most consequential dynasties in Atlanta's entire history. Although individual family members seldom make appearances on billionaire lists today, their undeniable control and profound influence over Coca-Cola throughout the 20th century and the vast philanthropic foundations that wealth established continue to profoundly shape Atlanta in 2026. This is what you call institutional wealth, not fleeting lifestyle wealth. To fully appreciate the Woodruff's significance, you must travel back to 1919. That was the year Ernest Woodruff organized a group of financiers that acquired Coca-Cola from its founder Asa Candler. His own son, Robert W. Woodruff, took the helm as the company's president in 1923 and would stand as the commanding force behind Coke for more than 5 decades. Under the leadership of Robert Woodruff, Coca-Cola underwent a complete metamorphosis from a modest regional beverage company into a global consumer powerhouse. By the time he eventually stepped away from his executive role, Coke had become one of the most recognizable brands across the globe. Herein lies what most observers fail to grasp. The Woodruff family prioritized permanence far more than prominence. Instead of erecting a dynasty focused on individual displays of wealth, they constructed foundations designed to outlast any single person. The Robert W. Woodruff Foundation, along with associated family charitable trusts, currently oversees billions of dollars in assets, distributing hundreds of millions of dollars over the years. These substantial funds were instrumental in financing Emory University's evolution into a world-class research institution. The Woodruff Arts Center, the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, the High Museum, the Alliance Theater, and significant expansions of major healthcare networks, including Emory Healthcare, as well as civic initiatives that discreetly fortified Atlanta through its most turbulent periods. This category of wealth does not follow trends. It is built to endure. In my estimation, the Woodruff family exemplifies the highest tier of economic influence, even while being the least publicly visible. Their money is not tallied in ranked net worth columns. Instead, it dictates which universities will flourish, which hospitals will expand, and which arts organizations will weather economic downturns. That variety of power operates more quietly than billionaire lists, but it is arguably much more potent. Historically, Robert Woodruff did own large private estates in Georgia, along with extensive land holdings, and engaged in significant personal art and cultural patronage. However, by deliberate design, a great deal of that fortune was donated during his own lifetime, which makes the modern Woodruff legacy less about tangible assets and more about the power of their endowments. Their luxury today is institutional, permanence. So if the Woodruff family illustrates what occurs after Coca-Cola becomes a worldwide machine, our next family reveals the story of where it all began. Before Coca-Cola was an institution, before it completely remade Atlanta's economy, there was a single family whose fortune quite literally constructed the city's physical infrastructure. The Candler family established the Coca-Cola Company and deployed that initial fortune to sculpt Atlanta's landscape, its neighborhoods, and its civic organizations. While their financial holdings today are considerably more divided than those of later dynasties, their historical impact remains deeply embedded in the Igbo city's geography, its universities, and its real estate market. Asa Griggs, Candler, an Atlanta-based pharmacist, secured complete ownership of a then struggling beverage formula, Coca-Cola, and promoted it with relentless energy. By the dawn of the 1900s, Coke had risen to become one of the nation's most triumphant consumer products. Unlike the corporate dynasties that followed, Asa Candler didn't hold on to Coca-Cola indefinitely. In 1919, he and his family sold the entire company to an investment group headed by Ernest Woodruff for what was at the time an astronomical sum. That transaction secured the Candler family fortune, but it also placed the family on a trajectory entirely different from the one the Woodruffs would later navigate. The Candlers converted their brand wealth into land-based power. Rather than reinvesting heavily back into Coca-Cola's operations, the family channeled a significant portion of its capital into real estate development, sophisticated urban planning, institutional philanthropy, and private land acquisitions. They are responsible for building Candler Park, the Druid Hills Estates, and iconic structures like the Candler, building in addition to major residential communities connected to Atlanta's early growth. For an entire generation, the Candlers were more than just wealthy. They were the architects of the city. Atlanta's development patterns, its most elite neighborhoods, and its foundational infrastructure all followed the routes they underwrote. The Candler family's story offers a vital lesson in the history of wealth. They were pioneers, they made the right moves, and their influence was immense. Yet they also highlight the distinction between owning a dynamic system and merely owning a singular moment in time. Selling Coca-Cola guaranteed their generational privilege, but it also meant forfeiting the compounding power that would later make the Woodruffs legendary figures. The Candlers played a key role in building Atlanta, but they no longer hold the reins of the economic engines that propel it forward. In their heyday, the Candlers possessed vast estates in Druid Hills and architectural landmarks, many of which are still standing today. They had private art collections, livestock, extensive land holdings, and high-profile civic properties interwoven with Atlanta's identity. Today, a large part of that wealth has been sold off, donated or fractured through generations of inheritance and transformed into illiquid historical assets. The visible heritage is still there, but the economic command is gone. The Candlers are crucial because Atlanta would not appear the same without their influence. They serve as a reminder that early fortunes define cities. Land ownership forges a long-lasting legacy, and selling a world-altering company can put a ceiling on a family's potential future gains. They represent the origin story, but not the final chapter. Number 8 is a different case entirely. This is a fortune created within a single lifetime, constructed without any inheritance, and fiercely protected through direct ownership, then scaled into an institution that now competes with legacy empires. Tyler Perry is a self-made Atlanta billionaire whose immense fortune is founded on the total ownership of his creative content, his studio, and the very land beneath it all. As of January 19, 2026, Forbes estimates Tyler Perry's net worth at $1.4 billion, making him the world's richest actor and one of Atlanta's most influential modern wealth creators. Perry's fortune was not derived from salaries, royalties, or conventional studio contracts. It was born from ownership on a massive scale. He possesses 100% of the content he has produced since the 1990s, which includes films, television series, stage productions, and all the associated media intellectual property. His media empire alone has generated over $660 million in revenue, with Perry keeping an outsized share of the profits because he self-financed and controlled distribution during the early stages of his career. This unique ownership model is the single most critical reason Perry has eclipsed peers who had equal or even greater cultural visibility. In 2015, Perry purchased 330 acres of the former Fort McPherson military base in southwest Atlanta for around $30 million, and subsequently invested hundreds of millions more to transform it into Tyler Perry Studios. Let's consider what that truly signifies. 330 acres, constituting one of the largest production campuses in the entire United States, featuring 12 sound stages, permanent backlot environments, and a full-scale replica of the White House. That is more land than the studio lots of Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, or Sony. It is privately owned, carries little debt, and is controlled by a single individual. Perry became the very first Black American to fully own a major film studio, effectively converting Atlanta into a permanent hub for production, rather than just a temporary outpost for tax incentives. In 2025, Perry submitted plans to construct a 1.3 million square foot entertainment district adjacent to his studio campus, which is set to include offices, retail spaces, theaters, and public areas, indicating a strategic pivot from studio expansion to city-shaping mixed-use development. That particular move positions him closer to the Arthur Blank model of civic ownership than it does to traditional Hollywood production. Perry is not the wealthiest individual on this list, but he is certainly among the most autonomous. Perry's standing is a reflection of new money's power, not just raw balance sheet dominance. The families ranked above him command tens of billions through inherited wealth or multi-generational corporate structures. In contrast, Perry has built dynastic-style institutions within a single lifetime. His fortune is entirely under his control, not diluted across dozens of heirs and beneficiaries. This reality makes him the inaugural chapter of New Money Atlanta, not its final conclusion. Tyler Perry demonstrated how modern fortunes can be built at a global scale through the ownership of both ideas and land. My focus here is on Atlanta because it illustrates how wealth genuinely compounds within cities, not because these families are the only ones of consequence. Number 9 proves a different but equally powerful principle, that the most enduring wealth is not always loud, rapid, or celebrated. Sometimes it is accumulated quietly, one family at a time, within industries that people can never truly opt out of. I am referring to the Levitt family. They own and manage Gregory B. Levitt and Sons Funeral Homes and Crematory, which stands as one of the largest and most reputable black-owned funeral service enterprises in the metro Atlanta area. Established in 1980 by Gregory B. Levitt Sr., the enterprise has remained entirely under family control, with numerous locations that cater to over 2,200 families annually throughout the Atlanta region. Gregory B. Levitt Sr. originally learned the funeral profession directly from his father, George W. Levitt Sr., and in the 1970s he became a licensed third-generation funeral director. Gregory Sr., along with his wife, Betty, inaugurated a 5,000-square-foot facility located in Scottsdale, Georgia, which continues to function as their corporate headquarters. The company's initial expansion was fueled by its growing reputation and word-of-mouth referrals. During the 2000s, he constructed a 9,000-square-foot facility in Decatur. This new chapel's operations expanded to serve more than 1,300 families every year. In 2004, the South Gwinnett Chapel was established. At the time, it was the only funeral home in the area owned by African Americans, and it was constructed with more spacious visitation rooms and a 350-seat chapel. In 2009, the Buford Chapel, which included an on-site crematory, was opened and subsequently sold to reallocate financial resources. Then, in 2014, a new Conyers location reinforced the company's presence in Rockdale County. Their children, Gregory, Junior T. Lanier, and Dina, eventually joined the family operations, ensuring that ownership-client relationships and high service standards remained a family affair. The staff has now grown to exceed 100 people. The Levitt enterprise operates more like essential infrastructure than a fleeting trend. It's exceptionally rare for families to change their service providers. Trust is something that compounds over many decades, and the demand for their services is not cyclical. By owning their chapels, vehicle fleets, and facilities, they transform each location into an enduring community asset that generates highly predictable cash flow. From my perspective, the Levitt family truly exemplifies a form of quiet, durable wealth, the type that is built upon the reliability of service rather than public spectacle. It operates with the kind of governance and restraint typically associated with old money, but it is fundamentally new wealth created within a single generation, an empire that is still expanding and deliberately designed to endure. Atlanta's earliest fortunes were established upon land. Its more contemporary fortunes were erected on powerful brands. The last individual on this list merges those two worlds, deploying new money to fundamentally reshape the city's physical future. Egbert L.J. Perry. He serves as the chairman and chief executive officer of the Integral Group, a privately held Atlanta-based firm specializing in real estate development and investment that he co-founded in 1993. Integral is recognized nationwide for its large-scale mixed-income housing developments, mixed-use urban districts, and intricate public-private redevelopment projects that completely transform entire neighborhoods, not just individual structures. This is the work of city-making, capital, a stark contrast to merely chasing headlines. Egbert Perry arrived in the United States from Antigua and Barbuda as a teenager, training as a civil engineer, with both bachelor's and master's degrees before obtaining an MBA from Wharton. He first ventured into real estate and construction back in 1979, and over the course of 13 years was instrumental in scaling an Atlanta firm to become the third largest African-American owned construction and real estate company in the United States by 1992, boasting revenues approaching $200 million annually at its zenith. This background provided Perry with two critical advantages: a deep mastery of construction economics and the established credibility to operate at a neighborhood-wide scale. In 1993, he co-established the Integral Group with a clear mission to generate value in cities and mend the social fabric of communities, with an explicit concentration on mixed-income, mixed-use solutions in areas where the market had previously failed. Integral does more than just construct apartment buildings. It achieves mastery over complexity. This includes mixed-income housing seamlessly integrated with retail educational facilities and essential services, as well as complex public-private partnerships with cities and housing authorities and healthcare systems. Their expertise extends to program management covering demolition, environmental remediation entitlements, and intricate phased build-outs. They practice vertical integration across development construction management and both property and asset management. It is this comprehensive capability that leads governments and major institutions to choose Integral for high-stakes sites, where any misstep would entail significant political, economic, and social repercussions. Integral is currently the master developer for the campus of the former Atlanta Medical Center in a partnership with Wellstar Health System on a multi-phase mixed-use strategy that incorporates housing, grocery, and farm access, and other community resources. The demolition and site preparation work continued throughout 2025. The year 2026 represents a significant planning milestone. The initial phases of construction are anticipated to begin after 2026. This single project will shape the future of services, density, and mobility for an absolutely critical corridor of the city. Integral is also involved in transformative projects near underground Atlanta, which include developing senior housing, ensuring affordability at or below 80% of the area median income, thereby reinforcing the company's mixed income strategy within the urban core. Integral is a privately held company. Its true value is embedded within its projects, not reflected in personal net worth rankings. The firm has spearheaded billions in urban investments across the nation over 3 decades, employing hundreds and assembling capital stacks that are designed to outlast any single development cycle. Perry's influence is deeply structural, evident through board positions, including a former chair role at Fannie Mae, his policy credibility, and the authority to execute projects where others are simply unable. In my estimation, Egbert Perry represents the highest echelon of new money power precisely because it sculpts entire systems, not just fleeting seasons. When you ask the question, what will Atlanta become next, considering housing access, density, and services, the answer frequently leads back to the entity that can execute at a neighborhood scale while maintaining public trust. That entity is Integral. The central takeaway here is quite straightforward. Atlanta's authentic power is not quantified by media headlines or celebrity net worth. It is quantified by ownership, private companies, and intellectual property infrastructure like broadband and logistics, essential services such as pest control, and of course land. These are the projects that determine where people will live, work, and invest their capital. The families and the founders who command these levers are not just accumulating wealth. They are actively shaping the city's destiny. This narrative is far from over, and its next chapter will be even more consequential than the first. The old money dynasties demonstrated how control and patience can compound wealth across generations. Now the new money builders are employing those very same principles, keeping their equity closely held, acquiring hard assets, and scaling up essential services to redraw Atlanta's map in real time. If you can grasp this dynamic now, all future developments in this story will become profoundly more understandable.